You know, the Big Bang is often presented as though it's a done deal, that it's well understood, that the evidence all points inexorably to this whole picture of the past and vast millions of years and so on. The Big Bang is supposedly based on the idea that when we observe the universe around us, we see that the galaxies and stars are all receding from us. Now, if you were to wind that backwards, it looks like it would all condense down into one place, and people can figure out that it would have, 14 or 15 billion years ago, it all exploded, and now what we're seeing is the aftermath. But it turns out that, in fact, the Big Bang fails to explain the observations in a number of very fundamental ways.
We are told today we live in a universe that's made up of 96% of stuff we know nothing about. We're told that 4%, the other 4%, which we do know about, so stuff like normal matter, the chairs we're sitting on, the room, the earth, the solar system, everything we can see is normal matter. The rest is this dark matter and dark energy. Stephen Chu, the energy minister, Obama's energy minister, speaking at an Australian Institute of Physics conference to high school students, says, quote almost, "We know nearly everything we need to know about the universe except for a few small details. What is dark energy and what is dark matter? It's 96% of the stuff of the universe we know nothing about."
Cosmology is not real science in the sense of regular, repeatable, testable science, because cosmology is about a one-off event, supposedly the Big Bang. It happened one-off in the past. We can't repeat it. We've got no other universe to test it with. We've only got this one universe. So really, cosmology falls out of the definition of real science.
The universe, according to Big Bang, had an origin in time. They say it's only 13 billion years old. Therefore, we can only see at most 13 billion light years. This means we only can see a drop in the ocean. You have to make massive assumptions about the rest of the universe. And what if we just happen to be living in a little local bubble and the rest of the universe was totally different?
Many people say that creationists have an issue with light travel. That is, how can we see light from distant stars when the Earth is only 6,000 years old? But the Big Bang, in fact, has its own light travel problem. This has to do with the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is supposedly the afterglow of the Big Bang, and which has been observed to have a very uniform temperature no matter where you look in space. And there just hasn't been enough time for the energy to be transferred across space to make all this temperature uniform to the extent that it is. And that's called the horizon problem.
Now, there was an interesting explanation or attempt to find a solution to this, and it's called the inflationary period. So some incredibly short instant after this initial Big Bang, the universe expanded by massive orders of magnitude, and then somehow this period of inflation, as it's called, stopped. So it starts for no particular reason, and it stops for no particular reason. And by the way, during it, gravity has to work in reverse. So rather than matter being attracted to matter, it has to repel it. And so there's this amazing story is told to try and patch up this glaring problem that the Big Bang has.
The inflation proponents have no good physical model for this faster-than-light expansion. It's a fudge factor. But the Bible teaches several times that God stretched out the heavens. The uniformity of background temperature is consistent with the universe being upheld by a single creator outside time and space. Furthermore, it's not just a God did it explanation. Creationist physicists have developed multiple competing models of this expansion using Einsteinian general relativity.
The Big Bang model basically says that high redshift objects are distant, low redshift objects are nearby. Astronomers like Alton Arp and others have found many, many exceptions to this case where they've found high redshift quasars physically associated with low redshift galaxies. And when I say physically associated, I mean we see bridges of stars and gas connecting the two, X-ray emitting gas. It is one very famous case, NGC 7319, where we find a high redshift quasar in front of an active low redshift spiral galaxy, which should not happen in a Big Bang universe. There's something wrong. There's a serious problem that has to be answered.
There are a lot of these anomalies where you have objects with vastly different redshifts that are somehow connected with each other. This should not be possible if redshift was a measure of distance. But clearly they are connected, which means that the standard interpretation of redshift is wrong, and this undermines the Big Bang itself.
If the theory is the incorrect description of what we observe, when we try to apply it to what we observe, we'll have to make up fictitious entities to make the theory fit. Dark matter is invoked to explain peculiar motion in spiral galaxies and in clusters and so on. Dark energy is used to explain this anomalous acceleration of the universe when they use these bright supernova light sources. And inflation is used to smooth out the universe, to make it appear the way we see it today. But these unknowns are not experimentally verified and in my opinion, never will be.
The Big Bang Theory has a number of secular objectors. In 2004, 33 of these cosmology dissenters wrote an open letter published in New Scientist, and over 100 more cosmologists have added to this letter. And they said, among other things, an open exchange of ideas is lacking, and doubt and dissent are not tolerated. In no other field of physics would this continual recourse to new hypothetical objects be accepted as a way of bridging the gap between theory and observation.
So you might ask this question, why with all the modern technology, supercomputers, we have large telescopes with adaptive optics, we have space telescopes, why haven't we found the observational evidence to firmly establish the Big Bang without invoking all these unknowns? To believe in the Big Bang, you have to take it on faith. There's certain things you have to assume as a given, without which you can't even make a calculation. How do you get to the ludicrous situation of 96% of the universe made up of stuff we know nothing about? Cosmology is not experimental science. In fact, I would go so far as to say cosmology is not even science. It's a philosophy, it's a religion, a worldview, it's a belief system. It's not science at all.
As we learn more about the universe, we are continually amazed at the astonishing diversity and beauty we find. Though marred by the curse, the universe still exhibits the handiwork of the Lord. By learning more about the intricacies of the celestial realm, we gain an infinitesimal glimpse into the infinite mind of God. One extraordinary aspect of creation is the incredible range of sizes and distances we observe. The International Space Station orbits approximately 200 miles above the surface of the Earth. This is far higher than any aircraft, and yet it really isn't very far into space. The Earth itself is nearly 8,000 miles in diameter, and yet the expanse beyond extends to distances that we cannot truly comprehend. The space station and other man-made satellites represent only the surface of a celestial ocean. The Apollo astronauts traversed a much greater distance. Traveling at the speed of a bullet, they took 3 days to reach the moon. The moon lies at an average distance of 240,000 miles from Earth. This is the farthest that human beings have traveled into space. Yet, the Earth's distance from the sun is 400 times greater. The Earth orbits at an average distance of 93 million miles from the sun. but the outer planets orbit at much greater distances. Neptune orbits 30 times farther from the sun than Earth does. The dwarf worlds Pluto and Eris are even farther out. Their orbits do not lie in the same plane as the planets. The orbits of all the planets could be contained in a cube that is 6 billion miles on a side. Yet, the distance to the stars is far greater. The next nearest star system is Alpha Centauri. How many solar systems would fit between the Sun and Alpha Centauri? The answer is an astonishing 4,278. It is a distance that is almost impossible to imagine. We can see that Alpha Centauri consists of more than one star. The combined light from these two stars appears as a single star in our night sky. Alpha Centauri A is the larger and brighter of these two stars. It is a glowing orb of hydrogen gas, very similar to the Sun, though slightly larger. Its surface temperature is around 6,000 degrees Celsius, the same as the Sun, and so it has a similar color. Alpha Centauri B is slightly smaller and cooler than the Sun. Alpha Centauri A and B orbit each other every 80 years. A third distant star of this system, called Proxima Centauri, is faintly visible. The constellations look very similar to the way they look from our solar system. This indicates that most bright stars are far more distant than Alpha Centauri. The Big Dipper is a familiar sight, and so is the constellation Cassiopeia. Except there is now an extra star in this constellation. That is the Sun. As seen from Alpha Centauri, the Sun is just a bright star. The planets cannot be seen at all from this distance. As we journey back to the solar system, the constellations change only slightly. The Sun is over 100 times larger than Earth in diameter. And while most stars are smaller than this, some of the brighter stars in our night sky are considerably larger. Sirius is the brightest star in our nighttime sky. Sirius is bright because it is relatively nearby, a mere 50 trillion miles away. It is almost twice the diameter of the Sun. The light blue color indicates that Sirius has a surface temperature of around 9,000 degrees Celsius. So, blue stars are considerably hotter than the Sun, whereas red stars are cooler. Pollux is a member of the constellation Gemini. It is a giant star, nearly 10 times larger than the Sun in diameter. The constellation Orion is a familiar sight in our winter sky. It has a number of stars even larger than Pollux. The center star of Orion's belt is called Alnilam. It is a blue supergiant. 25 suns could be lined up across its disk. Blue stars like Alnilam are very luminous. They expend their fuel quickly and cannot last billions of years. So, blue stars remind us that the universe is much younger than is generally claimed. Secular astronomers are forced to assume that stars like Alnilam have spontaneously formed in the recent past. However, star formation is riddled with theoretical problems and has never been observed. Rigel is also a blue supergiant. It stretches nearly 70 suns across. As amazing as this seems, even larger stars have been discovered. Betelgeuse is one of the largest stars in the solar neighborhood. It is a red supergiant, even larger than Rigel. Betelgeuse is roughly 600 times the diameter of the Sun. If Betelgeuse were placed at the center of our solar system, we would be inside it. Betelgeuse would completely engulf the inner planets. The size of Betelgeuse pales in comparison to its distance from our planet. Astronomers often use the term light year when referring to stellar distances. A light year is a measure of distance, not time. 1 light year is roughly 6 trillion miles. Betelgeuse is over 400 light years away, or 2,400 trillion miles. Yet, it's one of the nearest of Orion's bright stars. Alnilam lies over 1,000 light years away. Now we will travel much deeper into space, several hundred light years toward Orion's belt. On our journey, we get a sense of the astonishing distance to these stars. The Hyades star cluster is visible on our right. We pass Bellatrix, the nearest of Orion's bright stars. Next out, Betelgeuse slowly drifts across the scene. A myriad of faint stars continually glides past our field of view. We are now roughly 400 light years away from home. As we pick up speed, we pass by Rigel and Safe. Finally, we reach the nearest stars of Orion's belt. We have traveled a distance of 5 million billion miles into space. We glance back in the direction of the solar system. It is located here. However, the sun could not be seen from this distance without a telescope. It is a humbling experience to think of our entire solar system reduced to an invisible point. This is the Upsilon Andromedae system. It has 3 known planets. All 3 are larger than Jupiter and orbit remarkably close to their star. The innermost planet is estimated to be 20 times larger than Earth in diameter. Its proximity to the star makes its temperature over 1100 degrees Celsius. Since current technology is not able to observe these worlds directly, we can only speculate what they look like. But we can be certain that their richness declares the majesty of their maker. In addition to stars and planets, the universe contains nebulae. A nebula is a cloud of hydrogen and helium gas spread over a vast region of space. Many nebulae are very hot and give off light. They are some of the most colorful objects in the cosmos. Some nebulae are relatively small, produced by the ejected gas of a single star. These are called planetary nebulae because many of them are round and appear like an out-of-focus planet. Planetary nebulae are quite common. Other nebulae are much larger, spanning many light years. These amazing creations can rightly be called the artwork of God. Our summer evening sky contains a number of other objects called globular clusters. They're too faint to be detected with the unaided eye, but are easily seen in binoculars or a small telescope. The globular cluster M4 is found just to the right of the red star Antares. Through binoculars, M4 appears as a faint, fuzzy blur. However, a telescope reveals that this blur is the combined light of thousands of stars. This is the most distant object we've visited so far. M4 is 7,000 light years away from Earth. That's 40 million billion miles. This globular cluster contains roughly 100,000 stars, yet it is only 50 light years across. This incredibly dense star field would be a wonderful sight. This is our galaxy, the Milky Way. It spans 80,000 light years across and contains more than 100 billion stars. The Milky Way is a spiral galaxy. The brighter stars are concentrated into arms that wrap around the disk. Since our solar system is within this disk, we see the Milky Way as a cloudy band in our night sky. No human being or spacecraft has seen our galaxy from the outside, as shown here. It is difficult to grasp just how large our galaxy is. Our solar system is located here. In fact, with the exception of M4, all the stars and planets we've visited are within this little ring. The Milky Way is a remarkable demonstration of God's power. But what's even more amazing is that our galaxy is merely one of billions. Every one of these faint clouds is an entire galaxy. As we pan upward, we see a strange band where galaxies seem to be missing. This is called the zone of avoidance and is aligned with the disk of our galaxy. Although many galaxies are undoubtedly in this region, gas and dust in our own galaxy prevent us from seeing them. Further up, we see a massive grouping of galaxies called the Virgo cluster. It contains over 2,000 galaxies and is 50 million light years away from Earth. At the heart of the Virgo cluster lies the giant elliptical galaxy M87, which has over 1 trillion stars. Galaxies come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Each one is a glorious demonstration of God's limitless power. Critics of the Bible have suggested that it is impossible for the light from these galaxies to reach Earth in only 6,000 years. They claim that these galaxies prove the universe is billions of years old. But in fact, there are several different ways to get light to travel these distances in a short period of time. These include gravitational time dilation, alternate synchrony conventions, and others. In fact, spiral galaxies are a serious problem for the notion of billions of years. Their spiral arms contain vast numbers of blue stars, which cannot last billions of years. Also, spiral galaxies rotate differentially, meaning the inner portions rotate faster than the outer portions. So the spiral arms cannot last billions of years. They would be twisted beyond recognition, but it's not a problem for the biblical timescale. From the Virgo cluster, our entire galaxy appears as a grain of sand, lost in a vast ocean of galaxies. Yet the galaxies shown here are only a small portion of the cosmos. Beyond this distance, astronomers have cataloged only certain regions of the visible universe. At last, we begin to see the large-scale structure of the universe. The galaxies are organized into a complete tapestry of strings and voids. For clarity, only a few selected regions are shown here. This is the universe, or at least as much of it as our present understanding makes possible. Just imagine the power involved as all these galaxies leapt into existence at God's command. And yet the Bible describes the creation of all this with the single phrase, "He made the stars also." The psalmist writes, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him?